In the sweltering heat of Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, a recently sidelined Special Forces captain was about to make a career-ending decision. What started as a routine briefing about a humanitarian convoy took a shocking turn when she came face-to-face with a commanding officer willing to let innocent people die for political convenience. Captain Maya Torres wasn't your typical desk-bound officer. For 12 years, she had spent her life perfecting the art of impossible rescues, known for bringing hostages home alive when everyone else said it couldn't be done. When she learned that 14 civilians, including Dr. Lena Cho, a woman she'd served with before, were captured by a ruthless militia, she had no idea she was walking into a battle that would define her entire career. Torres made a choice that would lead to either court-martial or vindication. What began as a direct order to stand down would become a solo infiltration mission behind enemy lines. The Horn of Africa would never be the same after one woman decided that some orders were meant to be broken. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one shooting at you, it's the one giving you orders. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning heat at Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti pressed against Captain Maya Torres like a physical weight as she stripped off her tactical gear. The field training exercise had gone flawlessly. Her team had executed a perfect hostage extraction scenario in the mock village behind the motor pool. 12 years of Special Forces operations had taught her that perfection in training translated to lives saved in the field. Torres, the voice cut through the equipment bay like a blade. Sergeant Elias Hawkins appeared in the doorway, his usually relaxed demeanor replaced by something sharper. "CEO wants all team leaders in the briefing room, now." Maya glanced at her watch. 09:30 hours. That's an unusual timing for a command brief. "New general flew in this morning," Hawk said, lowering his voice. "Word is he's got big plans for reshaping operations." The briefing room buzzed with subdued conversation as Maya entered. Every team leader from the base was present. Rangers, Special Forces, even the drone operators from the intelligence wing. At the front of the room stood a man Maya didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of pressed uniform that suggested he spent more time in Pentagon conference rooms than dusty forward operating bases. "Gentlemen, ladies," the voice carried the polished tone of someone comfortable addressing congressional committees. "I'm General Victor Kane, your new commanding officer. I've been brought here to modernize our approach to regional stability operations." Maya studied Kane's face as he spoke. Clean-shaven, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses rather than desert patrols. His chest displayed an impressive array of ribbons, but Maya noticed what was missing. No combat infantry badge, no bronze star with V device. This was a staff officer, not a field commander.
Forces teams will transition to training and advisory roles. Real-time crisis response will be handled through coordinated air assets and intelligence-guided strikes. The room fell silent. Maya raised her hand. "Captain Torres, isn't it?" Kane consulted his tablet. "I've reviewed your file. Impressive combat record, though marked by several instances of creative interpretation of operational parameters. Sir, I'd like to point out that those interpretations resulted in successful mission outcomes and zero friendly casualties," Maya said evenly. Kane's smile was practiced, political. "I'm sure they did, Captain. But success achieved through reckless improvisation isn't sustainable or scalable. Modern conflicts require discipline, not heroics. With respect, sir, hostage situations and time-sensitive rescues don't always allow for extended approval processes. When lives are on the line—" "When lives are on the line," Kane interrupted, his voice taking on an edge, "we follow established protocols. We use the tools and procedures that minimize risk to American personnel while achieving strategic objectives. Your hands-on approach might have been acceptable in previous commands, but it has no place in a modern operational theater." Maya felt the weight of every stare in the room, some sympathetic, others carefully neutral. She had walked into briefings like this before, but never as the explicit target of a commanding officer's dismissal. "Sir, my team's success rate speaks for itself. We've extracted civilians from hostile territory, disrupted insurgent operations, and—" "Effective immediately," Kane cut her off. "I'm reassigning you to strategic planning. Your team will be redistributed among other units for training purposes only. Perhaps working with maps and reports will give you time to appreciate the value of measured, thoughtful approaches to complex problems." The dismissal hit like a physical blow. Maya had spent years perfecting her team's capabilities, building trust with local contacts, developing the kind of institutional knowledge that couldn't be learned from satellite feeds and intelligence reports. Her squad wasn't just a military unit, it was a precisely calibrated instrument for saving lives in impossible situations. "Sir, my team's specialized training and regional experience—" "Are noted and filed, Captain. This briefing is about operational readiness for modern challenges, not reminiscing about past glories. You're dismissed." Maya executed a perfect about-face, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet room. Each step felt like a retreat from everything she had worked to achieve. As she reached for the door handle, she heard Kane continue as if nothing had happened. "Now, for our enhanced capabilities assessment, I want detailed reports on drone availability, satellite coverage windows, and strike coordination protocols. Precision and efficiency, that's how we win modern wars." Outside in the corridor, Maya leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The recycled air of the base felt stifling after months of field operations. Through the narrow windows, she could see the Horn of Africa stretching toward the horizon, a landscape of opportunity and danger that Kane apparently believed could be managed from a computer screen. Hawk emerged from the briefing room a few minutes later, shaking his head in disgust. "That was complete garbage, Maya. Everyone in there knows you're the most effective operator on this base." "Except the one who matters," Maya replied, pushing herself off the wall. "Give it time. Kane's new. He'll figure out what real operational experience looks like." I wished I could share Hawk's optimism, but I'd seen Kane's type before. Officers who confused technological capability with tactical wisdom, who believed complex human situations could be solved with flowcharts and approval processes. The difference was that she'd never been stuck serving under one. Maya was reviewing personnel files in her temporary office when the alarm klaxon cut through the afternoon stillness. The base's communications center came alive with crackling radio chatter, and within minutes, personnel were moving with controlled urgency that signaled a real crisis. Hawk appeared in her doorway, his face grim. "Humanitarian convoy is overdue. They were supposed to check in 30 minutes ago." Maya was already reaching for her gear when she caught herself. She was strategic planning now, not operations. "What's the convoy makeup?" "Mixed civilian and military escort. Doctors Without Borders medical team plus security detail. They were delivering supplies to a clinic near the Ethiopian border." Hawk checked his watch. "Radio silence for 43 minutes now." The briefing room filled quickly as Kane called an emergency session. Colonel Farah Idris, the Djiboutian Army liaison, stood near the front with a satellite phone pressed to her ear. Her expression told Maya everything she needed to know before Kane even spoke. "We have confirmation of an attack," Kane announced without preamble. "The humanitarian convoy was ambushed approximately 60 kilometers northeast of here. Djiboutian forces found burned vehicles and evidence of a coordinated assault." Colonel Idris stepped forward. "General Kane, our reconnaissance indicate the attack was conducted by the Hawar militia, the same group responsible for 3 previous kidnappings in the region. They typically move prisoners quickly to avoid detection." "Casualties," someone called from the back of the room.
Kane consulted his tablet. "Vehicle crew confirmed dead. 14 personnel missing, including 5 American civilians." He paused, and Maya saw something flicker across his features. Calculation rather than concern. "Among the missing is Dr. Lena Cho, a U.S. citizen working with the medical team." Maya's blood went cold. She knew Lena, They'd worked together on a joint operation 2 years ago when Maya's team had provided security for a medical mission in Somalia. Lena was brilliant, dedicated, and completely fearless when it came to helping people in war zones. "Sir," Maya stood up, "the Hewa militia has a pattern. They move prisoners within 6 hours of capture to avoid rescue attempts. If we deploy immediately—" "Captain Torres," Kane's voice carried clear warning. "Your current assignment is strategic planning, not operational response." "Sir, with respect, I've dealt with this militia before. They don't negotiate. They execute hostages for maximum media impact. Every minute we delay reduces the chances of successful recovery." Kane's expression hardened. "What I see, Captain, is exactly the kind of impulsive reaction I was brought here to prevent. This situation requires careful analysis, diplomatic coordination, and measured response." Colonel Idris cleared her throat diplomatically. "General Kane, if I may, Captain Torres is correct about the militia's operating procedures. Our intelligence suggests they typically eliminate prisoners within 24 hours unless their demands are met immediately. Which is precisely why we're going to handle this through proper channels," Kane replied. "I've already initiated contact with State Department representatives and AFRICOM Command. This will be resolved through diplomatic pressure and coordinated action, not cowboy heroics." Maya felt the room's temperature rising. "Sir, diplomatic pressure takes time these people don't have. A rapid insertion team could—" "Could what, Captain? Create an international incident? Escalate regional tensions? Get more Americans killed?" Kane stepped closer, his voice dropping to a level meant only for her. "Let me be absolutely clear. There will be no unauthorized operations, no improvised rescue attempts, and no heroic gestures that compromise the broader strategic picture. Is that understood?" The challenge was unmistakable. Maya glanced around the room and saw a mixture of frustration and resignation on her colleagues' faces. Everyone knew what needed to happen, but Kane held all the cards. "Understood, sir," Maya replied through gritted teeth. "Excellent. Colonel Idris, please coordinate with your government on diplomatic outreach. All other personnel maintain normal operations until further notice." Kane closed his folder with finality. "Dismissed." As the briefing room emptied, Maya lingered near the back, her mind racing through possibilities. Hawk appeared beside her, his expression carefully neutral, but his voice barely audible. "Grabbed some comm intercepts during the meeting. The militia's already moved them from the attack site, heading for a temporary holding area about 30 clicks from here." Maya met his eyes. "How do you know that?" "Because, unlike some people, I actually listen to local intelligence networks." Hawk glanced toward the door, where Kane had disappeared. "You're thinking what I think you're thinking." "I'm thinking Lena Cho doesn't have time for diplomatic solutions," Maya replied quietly. "Maya," Hawk's voice carried genuine concern. "Kane wasn't making idle threats. If you go against his direct orders, your career is over. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, the works." Maya stared out the window toward the distant hills, where somewhere 14 people were counting on rescue that might never come. She thought about Lena's steady hands treating wounded civilians under fire, her quiet courage in the face of impossible situations. The respect she'd earned in combat zones felt like it belonged to a different person, someone whose expertise mattered, whose judgment was trusted. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Corporal Jason Coldwell, known to everyone as Brick, the base's senior armorer and quartermaster. His weathered face wore the carefully neutral expression of someone delivering an unofficial message. "Evening, Captain. Mind if I come in?"
Maya stepped aside, curious about the unexpected visit. Brick settled his considerable frame into her small chair and studied her for a moment. "Heard about the convoy situation," he said quietly. "Also heard about the general's perspective on handling it." "Word travels fast on a base this size," Maya replied carefully. "It does, especially when people are upset about good folks being left to die for political reasons." Brick leaned forward slightly. "You know, funny thing about supply requisitions. Sometimes equipment gets checked out for training purposes, then somehow never makes it to the range. Administrative error, you might say." Maya met his gaze. "That would be highly irregular, Corporal." "Yes, ma'am, it would. Course, I've been known to be absent-minded about paperwork, especially when I'm concerned about friends." Brick stood up slowly. "If you were to, hypothetically, need certain items for an unofficial evening training exercise, well, I might not notice if a few things went missing until morning inventory." The offer hung in the air between them. Brick's debt to Maya went back 3 years to a convoy ambush outside Mogadishu, where she'd risked her life to pull him from a burning vehicle. Some debts couldn't be repaid through official channels. "Brick, you know what Kane would do if he found out you helped me." "Yes, ma'am, I do. Same thing he'd do to you, probably worse. But some things are worth the risk. Those folks in the field, they deserve better than diplomatic solutions and committee meetings." After Brick left, Maya sat in the dark, weighing impossible choices. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Medical supplies. Clinic 12 kilometers NE. Still compromised. Local sources reliable. -F. Colonel Idris." The message was carefully neutral, but the intelligence was clear. The militia was using a rural clinic as their temporary base, and Farah's local contacts had confirmed it. It was a violation of protocol for the Djiboutian officer to share operational intelligence with someone Kane had specifically sidelined, but Farah understood the stakes. Maya walked to her window and stared out at the base perimeter. Security lights cast harsh shadows across the motor pool, where vehicles sat ready for missions that might never come. Beyond the lights, the African night stretched endlessly, full of dangers that couldn't be managed from conference rooms or computer screens. Her phone showed 22:03 hours. Somewhere out there, Lena and 13 other people were wondering if anyone cared enough to risk coming for them. Kane's diplomatic solution might work in a week, maybe 2, if the militia decided to negotiate instead of executing their prisoners for maximum publicity. Maya opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. If she was going to do this, if she was going to throw away 12 years of military service for one unauthorized mission, she needed to leave a record of her reasoning. Personal log, Captain Maya Torres, 15 August 2027, 22:05 hours. She spoke quietly into the device. General Kane has issued a direct order forbidding rescue operations for the captured humanitarian workers. His position is that diplomatic solutions and proper procedures must take precedence over immediate action. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I respectfully disagree with that assessment. The Hawar militia has a documented pattern of executing hostages within 24 hours when their demands aren't met immediately. Dr. Lena Cho and 13 other innocent people will likely die if we wait for diplomatic channels to produce results." She set down the recorder and picked up the photo she kept on her desk. Her special forces team after a successful hostage rescue in Syria. 16 people they'd brought home safely because someone had been willing to take action instead of waiting for perfect conditions. Sometimes the choice isn't between right and wrong. Sometimes it's between action and inaction, between accepting risk and accepting certainty of failure. I've spent 12 years learning how to save lives in impossible situations. I won't stop now because someone thinks political considerations matter more than human lives. She clicked off the recorder and opened her armory locker. If she was going to do this, she had one narrow window of opportunity.
The militia would move the prisoners again within hours, to a location much harder to reach, much harder to assault. Maya pulled on her base uniform and checked her watch. 22:30 a.m. The armory would be unguarded for another hour, and Brick would be conveniently absent from his post. After that, if everything went according to plan, she'd have 6 hours to reach the militia position before dawn. If she was wrong, 14 people would die and she'd face court-martial for disobeying direct orders. If she was right, those same 14 people might live to see their families again. Some choices, Maya reflected as she headed for the door, weren't really choices at all.
The armory sat in darkness, its steel-reinforced door slightly ajar. Maya approached carefully, every shadow potentially concealing base security on their routine patrols. The familiar scent of gun oil and metal polish greeted her as she slipped inside. Brick emerged from behind a rack of assault rifles, moving with surprising stealth for his size. "Couldn't sleep either?" he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Funny how conscience keeps a man awake sometimes." Maya surveyed the weapons arranged on the workbench, a suppressed M4 carbine, ceramic body armor, night vision equipment, and enough ammunition for a sustained firefight. Professional-grade gear for a professional-grade problem. "This is way beyond administrative oversight, Brick," Maya said, running her fingers along the rifle's barrel. "Kane finds out you helped me, and you're looking at Leavenworth." Brick shrugged, continuing to pack magazines into a tactical vest. "Been in this business 22 years, Captain. Seen too many good people die because someone in an air-conditioned office thought procedure mattered more than action." He met her eyes. "Besides, that doctor lady, Cho, she patched up my kid brother when he got hit in that IED blast outside Kandahar. Some debts can't be paid through official channels." Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya hadn't known about the connection, but it explained Brick's commitment. In the Special Forces community, personal bonds often mattered more than rank structure. People remembered who had their backs when it counted. Radios encrypted and frequency hopping. Battery life should get you through 36 hours. GPS coordinates are programmed, but I'd recommend land navigation for the approach. Too easy to track electronic signatures. The equipment felt familiar in Maya's hands, each piece representing capabilities that Kane's remote control warfare couldn't replicate. Technology was powerful, but sometimes you needed someone willing to pull the trigger up close. "Vehicle?" Maya asked. "Supply trucks fueled and ready. Papers show a routine run to the forward observation post. Should get you past the checkpoints without questions." Brick handed her a set of keys. "After that, you're on your own." Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Both Maya and Brick froze, weapons half-packed, as someone approached the armory door. Maya's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm before Hawk's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. "Figured I'd find you here," he said, slipping inside and closing the door behind him. "Got some updates you need to hear." Hawk unfolded a hand-drawn map, spreading it across the workbench between ammunition boxes. "Intercepted more militia communications about an hour ago. They're definitely using the clinic as a staging area, but they're planning to move the prisoners again at dawn, probably to their main compound near the Ethiopian border." "How much time does that give me?" Maya asked, studying the route Hawk had marked. 6 hours, maybe 7 if you're lucky, but Maya. Hawk's expression grew serious. "There's something else. Kane's got patrols out looking for you. He knows you're not in quarters, and he's putting together the pieces. You've got maybe a 2-hour head start before he figures out what you're planning." The timeline was getting tighter, but Maya had operated under worse conditions. The key was moving fast and staying ahead of both the militia and her own command structure. "What about the route to the clinic?" Maya asked. "Mostly clear, but you'll need to avoid Highway 1, too many checkpoints.
There's a back road through Arta village that'll get you most of the way, but the last 15 kilometers are on foot through rough terrain. Hawk traced the path with his finger. I've marked water sources and potential cover positions. Maya memorized the route, burning every detail into her memory. In hostile territory, the difference between life and death often came down to knowing where to find water or which ridge offered the best concealment. "Brick, how long until morning inventory?" she asked. 0600 hours. After that, Kane'll know exactly what equipment went missing. Brick finished loading the tactical vest and handed it to her. "But if you're moving now, you should be in position long before anyone figures out how to track you." Maya strapped on the gear, feeling the familiar weight of combat equipment settling across her shoulders. 12 years of operations had taught her to find comfort in preparation, in the methodical process of checking weapons and reviewing plans. "If this goes wrong," she said, looking at both men, "I never saw either of you tonight. Understood?" "Goes wrong," Hagrin grinned in the darkness. "Captain, you've never failed a rescue mission yet. Why would you start now?" "Because I've never gone up against my own command before," Maya replied grimly. But as she headed for the door, equipment secured and mission parameters clear, she felt the familiar calm that always came before action. Politics and procedure could wait. Somewhere in the darkness, 14 people needed her to do what she did best.
The supply truck's headlights cut through pre-dawn darkness as Maya navigated the winding road toward Arta village. Behind her, Camp Lemonnier's whites faded into the distance, along with her military career most likely. The thought should have bothered her more than it did. She reached the village as the first hints of sunrise touched the eastern horizon. Arta was a cluster of concrete buildings and corrugated metal roofs, the kind of place where people minded their own business and asked few questions about travelers passing through. Maya parked the truck behind a fuel station and continued on foot, her gear redistributed into a worn backpack that wouldn't attract attention. The 15-kilometer hike through rocky terrain tested her conditioning, but Maya had spent years training in environments like this. The landscape was unforgiving: loose stone, thorny scrub vegetation, and gullies that could snap an ankle if you weren't careful. But it also provided excellent concealment from both aerial surveillance and ground patrols. 2 hours after leaving the truck, Maya reached the rendezvous point Hawk had marked on his map, a dried riverbed that provided cover while offering multiple escape routes. She was checking her GPS coordinates when a voice spoke from the shadows behind a boulder. "Maya Torres, I wondered if I would see you again." Maya turned slowly, hands visible but ready to move. Commander Omar Rahim emerged from concealment, flanked by 2 armed men. He looked older than when they'd last crossed paths, grayer beard, more lines around his eyes, but the same intelligent wariness that had kept him alive in a dangerous business. "Omar, I wasn't sure you'd still be operating in this area." Rahim smiled, but his hand remained near his sidearm. "A man goes where opportunity calls. These days, opportunity seems to favor those willing to work with flexible arrangements." Maya had first encountered Rahim 3 years ago during a joint operation against smugglers moving weapons through the border region. He'd been a regional defense commander then, officially cooperating with international forces while privately running his own intelligence network. When the government changed and his political protection disappeared, Rahim had adapted, becoming the kind of local power broker who survived by being useful to multiple sides. "I need passage through militia territory," Maya said directly. "The Hawar group has hostages at the old clinic complex, American civilians." "Ah," Rahim's expression grew thoughtful. "I heard about the convoy attack. Tragic, but predictable. The Hawar militia has been growing bolder lately." He studied Maya carefully. "I assume this is not an official operation, or you would have arrived with helicopters and infantry support." "That's correct. This is a personal initiative." "Personal initiatives can be expensive. What are you offering in exchange for safe passage?" Maya had anticipated this. She pulled a waterproof pouch from her pack and handed it to Rahim. Inside were medical supplies, antibiotics, surgical instruments, morphine, items that were worth their weight in gold in remote areas where proper medical care was scarce. Interesting, Rahim said, examining the contents. But medical supplies don't solve my immediate problem. Which is, the Hawar militia has been interfering with my business routes. They have set up checkpoints, demand tribute from traders, generally make themselves unpleasant neighbors. Rahim's smile turned calculating. If something were to disrupt their operations in this area, it might benefit everyone involved. I understood. Rahim wasn't just offering passage, he was proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement. Help him eliminate a business rival while accomplishing her rescue mission. The hostages come out alive. That's non-negotiable. Of course, I have no interest in harming innocents, but if the Hawar militia's leadership were to suffer casualties during your rescue operation, Rahim shrugged eloquently. Such things happen in dangerous places. It wasn't the cleanest arrangement Maya had ever made, but clean arrangements were a luxury she couldn't afford. How many men are we talking about at the clinic? Perhaps a dozen fighters, plus their leader, a man called Garad, who fancies himself a strategic genius. They're well-armed but undisciplined, confident that their location is secure. Guards on the hostages? 2, maybe 3. The prisoners are being held in the clinic's old surgical wing. Concrete construction, few windows, easy to control. He consulted a hand-drawn map. My men can create a distraction at the main gate, draw attention away from the prisoner area. Maya studied the terrain around the clinic complex through her binoculars. The building sat in a natural depression, surrounded by low hills that offered excellent observation positions. The militia had posted sentries, but their positions were predictable, focused outward to watch for vehicles, not for a single infiltrator approaching from the backside. When? Maya asked. They're planning to move the prisoners at dawn, perhaps 5 hours from now. If you're going to act, it must be soon. Rahim stood, his men moving to flank him. We'll position ourselves near the main access road. When you're ready to move, signal with your flashlight, 3 long, 2 short. We'll provide your distraction.
As Rahim and his men disappeared into the rocky landscape, Maya settled into a concealed position overlooking the clinic. Through her scope, she could see movement in the compound, guards walking patrol routes, vehicles parked near the main building, the subtle signs of an operation that felt secure in its isolation. Somewhere in that complex, Lena and 13 other people were counting on rescue that their own government had decided was too risky to attempt. Maya checked her weapons one more time and began planning her approach route. The clinic complex looked different through night vision equipment, a green-tinted maze of buildings connected by covered walkways. Maya had been observing for 2 hours from her position on the eastern ridge, mapping guard rotations and identifying weak points in the militia's security perimeter. The main building was old Soviet construction, thick concrete walls designed to withstand both weather and warfare. The Hawar militia had added their own improvements, razor wire, sandbag emplacements, and elevated guard posts that commanded excellent fields of fire. Professional enough to be dangerous, but with gaps that spoke to overconfidence. Maya adjusted her scope and focused on the surgical wing, where Rahim had indicated the hostages were being held. Through a partially blocked window, she caught a glimpse of movement. Multiple figures seated against a wall, hands apparently bound. One raised her head at that moment, and Maya's breath caught. Dr. Lena Cho. Even in the green wash of night vision, Maya recognized her former colleague's profile. Lena appeared alert, watching the door, probably calculating escape possibilities the way Maya had taught her during their joint mission in Somalia. A guard walked past the window, young, carrying his AK-47 casually, more concerned with staying warm than maintaining proper surveillance. Maya counted his steps, timing his patrol route. 60 seconds between passes, moving predictably along the same path. Her radio crackled softly with Hawk's voice. Charlie 7, be advised. Grinch has discovered your absence. Base security is conducting expanded perimeter checks. Kane had figured it out.
Maya keyed her radio once in acknowledgement, then switched to a different frequency. She was committed now, no possibility of returning to base and claiming this was all a misunderstanding. Movement in the compound drew her attention back to the target. 2 vehicles were being prepared near the main gate, engines running, armed men loading equipment. The transfer Rahim had warned about was beginning ahead of schedule. Maya needed to move. Now. She signaled Rahim's position with her flashlight, 3 long flashes, 2 short, then began her descent toward the compound. The terrain was treacherous in darkness, loose rock and thorny vegetation that could betray her position with a single misstep. But Maya had done this kind of approach hundreds of times, and muscle memory guided her through the obstacles. 50 meters from the compound's rear fence, she froze. Voices carried on the night air. Guards talking, someone giving orders about departure times. The militia was getting ready to move, which meant Maya's window was shrinking fast. She low-crawled the final distance to the perimeter, wire cutters ready. The fence was chain-link topped with razor wire, effective against casual intrusion but not designed to stop someone with proper equipment and training. Maya cut a human-sized opening in 30 seconds, then slipped through into the compound. The surgical wing was isolated from the main complex, connected by a single covered walkway that provided both concealment and a natural choke point. Maya moved along the building's wall, staying below window level, listening for guard positions. Inside the building, she could hear muffled voices, the hostages talking quietly among themselves. No guards immediately visible, which meant they were probably stationed at the entrance to the surgical wing rather than inside with the prisoners. Maya reached the partially blocked window she'd observed from the ridge. Through the gap, she could see all 14 hostages seated against the far wall, their hands zip-tied, but their feet free. Lena sat near the center of the group, still alert, still watching. Maya tapped softly on the window frame. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. It was a signal she'd used with Lena during their previous mission, a way to indicate friendly forces without alerting guards. Lena's head turned toward the window, and Maya saw recognition flash across her face. The doctor nodded almost imperceptibly, then began speaking to the other hostages in a low voice, probably preparing them for whatever was about to happen. An explosion echoed from the main gate. Rahim's distraction had begun. I heard shouts, running footsteps, the sound of vehicles racing toward the commotion. Perfect timing. Maya moved quickly to the surgical wing's rear entrance, where a single guard stood smoking a cigarette, his attention focused on the noise from the main compound. Maya approached from his blind spot, moving with the silent precision that had kept her alive through 12 years of operations. The guard never saw her coming. Maya's chokehold dropped him unconscious in seconds, and she lowered his body carefully to avoid making noise. His keys opened the door to the surgical wing.
Inside, the hostages looked up as Maya entered, weapons ready but non-threatening. Lena's eyes showed relief mixed with concern. "Maya," she whispered, "thank God. But there are at least 3 more guards in the building." "How many hostiles total?" Maya asked, already moving to cut the zip ties binding the civilians' hands. "Maybe 10 or 12. Their leader, they call him Garad, left an hour ago with half the men. Said they were moving us to a more secure location." Lena rubbed circulation back into her wrists. "The ones who stayed behind seemed nervous, jumpy." Maya freed the last hostage and moved to the window to check the courtyard. Rahim's distraction was working. Most of the remaining guards had moved toward the main gate, leaving the surgical wing area relatively clear. "Stay close, stay quiet. Follow my lead. We're moving to the rear exit. Anyone who can't keep up, speak now." One of the aid workers had a sprained ankle from the initial capture, but he insisted he could manage. Maya distributed the group into a tight formation and led them toward the door. As they reached the threshold, automatic weapons fire erupted from somewhere in the main building. Shouts in Arabic echoed through the complex, and Maya heard boots running in their direction. "Contact," she muttered into her radio, moving to extraction point. The courtyard between the surgical wing and the compound's rear exit stretched 30 meters.
open ground that would leave them exposed to any guards who remained in the main building. Maya held the hostages at the doorway while she scanned for threats. "Movement, 2 o'clock," she whispered to Lena, who had positioned herself near the back of the group, guard tower still manned. The sentry in the elevated position was focused on the firefight at the main gate, but it would only take one glance in their direction to compromise the entire escape. Maya needed to neutralize the threat without alerting the rest of the compound. She unslung her suppressed rifle and found a stable shooting position against the doorframe. 120 meters to target, slight crosswind, elevated angle. Maya controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger. The suppressed round took the guard in the chest, dropping him silently from view. Maya waited 10 seconds for any reaction, then motioned the hostages forward. "Move fast, stay low, head for the gap in the fence." The group crossed the courtyard in a dispersed formation, each person covering the distance as quickly as their condition allowed. Maya brought up the rear, watching for threats, while Lena helped the injured aid worker maintain pace. They were halfway across when a door burst open in the main building. A militiaman emerged, scanning the area with his weapon raised. Maya dropped to one knee and put 2 rounds center mass before he could call out a warning. "Faster," she urged the hostages. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before they figure out what's happening." The group reached the fence opening and began squeezing through one by one. Maya counted each person through. 11, 12, 13. Lena was helping the last hostage when voices erupted from the surgical wing behind them. "They're gone! The prisoners are gone!" Arabic commands echoed through the compound as guards rushed toward the surgical wing. Maya pushed Lena through the fence opening and followed, then immediately began leading the group up the slope toward the ridge where she'd left her observation equipment. Behind them, the compound came alive with activity. Searchlights swept the surrounding terrain, and Maya could hear vehicles starting. The militia had discovered the escape, and they'd be organizing pursuit within minutes. "How far to safety?" Lena asked, breathing hard from the climb. 2 kilometers to the rendezvous point, but they'll have vehicles, and they know this terrain. We need to reach cover before they organize a proper search. The rocky terrain that had concealed Maya's approach now worked against the larger group. The hostages were civilians, some injured, all exhausted from their captivity. They couldn't move with the speed and stealth that solo infiltration required. Maya's radio crackled. "Charlie 7, multiple vehicles departing the compound. Suggest you accelerate your timeline." Hawk's voice carried tension that Maya had rarely heard. The militia was mobilizing faster than expected, and her extraction route was about to become a combat zone. "Change of plans," Maya announced, studying the landscape ahead. "We're not going to outrun them on foot. There's a wadi system about 500 meters northeast, natural drainage channels that will provide concealment and cover." She led the group at an angle across the slope, trading the direct route for better terrain. Behind them, vehicle lights began sweeping the hillside, probing for movement. The militia knew roughly where they were. It was only a matter of time before the search pattern brought hunters and prey together.
The wadi system was a network of dry stream beds carved into the hillside by decades of seasonal flooding. The channels were deep enough to conceal a walking person and provided multiple branching routes that would confuse pursuit. Maya guided the hostages into the main channel and began moving downstream. "Single file. Watch your footing, no talking unless absolutely necessary," she instructed. "Dr. Cho, you're in charge of the group. I'll scout ahead." Maya moved forward along the wadi, checking each bend for ambush positions and escape routes. The terrain was good. The dry stream bed provided a natural highway that led generally toward Rahim's position, while the rocky walls offered protection from small arms fire. A vehicle engine grew louder overhead. Maya flattened against the wadi wall and motioned for the hostages to take cover. Through the gap between rocks, she could see headlights sweeping back and forth, searching. The engine sound faded as the search moved to a different area.
Maya waited 30 seconds, then continued forward. They were making good progress, but the militia would eventually figure out the Wadi system and begin checking the drainage channels systematically. Her radio crackled again. Charlie 7, be advised, additional contacts approaching from the north. Estimate 6 to 8 vehicles converging on your area. Maya's blood went cold. 6 to 8 vehicles meant the entire Hawar militia was joining the search. Either Garad had returned with reinforcements, or they'd called in support from other units. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. All units, this is Charlie 7, initiating emergency extraction protocols. Repeat, emergency extraction. She turned back to the hostages who were watching her with a mixture of hope and growing fear. They could all hear the vehicle engines multiplying around them, feel the search net tightening. Dr. Cho, I need to know, can everyone in this group move fast for about 10 minutes? I mean, really fast, combat pace. Lena looked at the exhausted civilians, then back at Maya. If it's the difference between getting captured and getting home, yes, we can move. Good, because we're about to find out how much they want us back. The sound of gunfire erupted from somewhere ahead, Rahim's men engaging the militia search teams. Maya checked her weapons and prepared to lead 14 civilians through what was rapidly becoming a war zone. The easy part, she reflected grimly, was over. The Wadi erupted in chaos as automatic weapons fire sparked off the rocky walls above Maya's position. The militia had found them. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness from multiple directions, indicating at least 3 search teams converging on their location. Move, 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 Maya shouted, pushing the hostages deeper into the drainage channel. Stay low, keep moving, don't stop for anything. The group surged forward through the wadi, stumbling over loose rocks and fighting panic as bullets whined overhead. Maya brought up the rear, returning fire at the muzzle flashes while trying to keep the militia from getting close enough for accurate shots. There, one of the aid workers pointed ahead. The channel splits. Maya could see it. The wadi branched into 2 separate routes, one continuing northeast toward Rahim's position, the other curving back toward the main road. She made a quick tactical decision. Right branch, follow the right branch. A burst of gunfire erupted from the rocks above, closer this time. Maya felt something tug at her sleeve, then a burning sensation along her left arm. Blood seeped through her tactical shirt, but the wound felt superficial, painful, but not incapacitating. Maya, Lena had seen her stumble. You're hit. Keep moving, Maya replied through gritted teeth. It's not bad. Behind them, Arabic voices grew louder as the militia fighters descended into the wadi system. They could hear their boots on stone, the metallic clatter of equipment. They were gaining ground. The right branch of the wadi led upward through a series of natural stone steps carved by centuries of water flow. The hostages climbed desperately, their civilian clothing torn by thorns and sharp rocks. One of the doctors, an older man named Peterson, was struggling with the pace. I can't. I need to rest, Peterson gasped, leaning heavily against the wadi wall. Dr. Peterson has a heart condition, Lena explained quickly. He needs... Gunfire erupted from behind them again, much closer. Maya could see the first militia fighter entering the right branch of the wadi, perhaps 50 meters back. Lena, get him moving, Maya ordered, raising her rifle. Whatever it takes. Lena grabbed Peterson under his arm, half carrying him up the rocky slope. Maya found a stable shooting position and put 3 rounds toward the pursuing fighter, forcing him to take cover. It would buy them time, but not much. Maya's radio crackled. Charlie 7, this is Raven. I can see your position. You've got hostiles approaching from 2 directions and more vehicles arriving at the main road. Rahim's voice carried urgency that Maya had never heard before. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated. Raven, what's your status on the distraction? Maya asked, climbing after the hostages while keeping her rifle ready.
Distraction is becoming a full engagement. These militia fighters are more motivated than I expected. The sound of gunfire punctuated Rahim's transmission. I can hold them for maybe 10 more minutes. Then I have to withdraw my men. 10 minutes. Maya looked at the struggling group of civilians ahead of her and knew it wasn't enough time. They needed a miracle, or they needed help. The answer came from an unexpected source. Maya's radio crackled with a familiar voice. Charlie 7, this is base actual. Be advised we have assets inbound to your location. Kane. Somehow the general had found her position and was sending support. Maya's first instinct was suspicion. Kane had been willing to let the hostages die rather than risk a rescue operation. Why would he change his mind now? Base Actual, clarify your intent, Maya transmitted. Charlie 7, your unauthorized operation has created a diplomatic incident. I am deploying QRF to extract you and restore order. Kane's voice carried barely controlled fury. Maintain your position and prepare for immediate evacuation. The quick reaction force meant helicopters, air support, overwhelming firepower. It also meant Maya would be arrested the moment she set foot on base. But if it saved the hostages' lives, the trade-off was acceptable. All hostages, listen up. Friendly helicopters are inbound. When they arrive, you board immediately. No questions, no delays. The group reached the top of the wadi as the first helicopter appeared on the horizon, a Black Hawk flying fast and low, followed by 2 Apache gunships. The cavalry had arrived, even if their intentions toward Maya were less than friendly. Maya found cover behind a boulder and provided overwatch as the helicopters approached. The Apaches immediately engaged the militia vehicles pursuing them, their 30mm cannons turning the night into a strobing light show. The Black Hawk flared for landing in a clear area 50 meters away. "Go, go, go!" Maya shouted, directing the hostages toward the helicopter. They ran across the open ground in a ragged line, helped by crew chiefs who had jumped from the Black Hawk to assist with loading. Maya counted each person as they reached safety. 11, 12, 13, 14. All accounted for. Lena was the last to board, and she turned back toward Maya. "Come on, let's go!" Maya shook her head. "They're not here for me, Doc. They're here for you." "Maya, don't be stupid. Get on the helicopter." Before Maya could respond, she saw movement in the rocks to her left. A militia fighter had flanked their position and was bringing his rifle to bear on the exposed hostages. Maya shifted her aim and fired, dropping the threat. But the movement exposed her to return fire from multiple directions. A bullet grazed her thigh, spinning her around. Another tugged at her body armor. Maya dove for cover as more gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Charlie 7, board the aircraft immediately. That is a direct order. Maya looked at the helicopter, where Lena stood in the doorway with her hand extended. 40 meters of open ground under fire. She could make it, probably, but not without risking the helicopter and everyone on board. "Negative, Base Actual. Too much incoming fire. Get the hostages out of here." Maya watched the Black Hawk lift off, carrying 14 rescued civilians towards safety. It was the outcome she'd hoped for, even if her own situation remained complicated. The Apache gunships continued engaging militia positions, their superior firepower gradually silencing the return fire. Within minutes, the shooting stopped. The surviving militia fighters had either been eliminated or retreated deeper into the rocky terrain. Maya emerged from cover, bleeding from 2 minor wounds, but mobile. "Charlie 7, prepare for extraction," Kane's voice commanded over the radio. A second Black Hawk touched down, disgorging a squad of Special Forces soldiers who immediately established a perimeter. Maya recognized the team leader, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, someone she'd worked with on previous operations. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I have orders to place you under arrest." Maya nodded and allowed herself to be restrained. As the helicopter lifted off with her secured in the cargo bay, she caught sight of Rahim's vehicles withdrawing toward the border. Their unlikely alliance had succeeded, at least partially. The real reckoning was yet to come. The helicopter touched down at a forward staging area 5 kilometers from Camp Lemonnier, where a convoy of military vehicles waited in formation. Maya could see Kane standing beside his command Humvee, surrounded by staff officers and base security personnel. Floodlights had been erected to illuminate the impromptu field headquarters, creating a stark arena for what was clearly intended to be a public demonstration. Master Sergeant Rodriguez helped Maya down from the Black Hawk, her hands still zip-tied behind her back. The minor wounds on her arm and thigh had been field dressed during the flight, but dried blood still stained her torn uniform.
Kane approached with the measured stride of someone savoring a moment of vindication. His pressed desert camouflage and polished boots contrasted sharply with Maya's combat-worn appearance. "Captain Maya Torres," Kane announced, loud enough for everyone present to hear, "you are under arrest for disobeying direct orders, unauthorized use of military equipment, and conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Understood, sir." "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Kane's tone suggested he was hoping for an apology, some acknowledgement of wrongdoing that would validate his command philosophy. "The hostages are safe, sir. All 14 civilians have been recovered alive." Kane's expression hardened. "Your reckless actions could have resulted in an international incident. You compromised diplomatic negotiations, violated host nation sovereignty, and put American lives at risk through unauthorized operations. With respect, sir, I saved American lives while you were willing to let them die for political convenience." The words hung in the air like a physical challenge. Around them, Maya could see soldiers and staff officers watching the confrontation with barely concealed interest. Word of the successful rescue had already spread through the base's communication networks. Kane stepped closer, his voice dropping to a level meant to convey personal menace. "Captain, your career is over. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, possible prison time. I hope your heroic gesture was worth destroying your future." Before Maya could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "General Kane, if I may." Dr. Lena Cho appeared at the edge of the illuminated area, still wearing the torn civilian clothes from her captivity. Behind her stood the other rescued hostages, all 14 of them, flanked by base medical personnel who had been treating them since their return. "Dr. Cho," Kane said with forced politeness, "you should be in the medical facility receiving proper care." "I've been treated, General, but I wanted to make sure you understood exactly what happened out there." Lena's voice carried the calm authority of someone accustomed to dealing with life-and-death situations. "Captain Torres didn't just save our lives. She saved them when no one else was willing to try." "The situation was being handled through appropriate diplomatic channels," Kane replied stiffly. "Appropriate channels?" One of the aid workers stepped forward, a young man named Williams whose arm was still in the sling from the initial convoy attack. "General, they told us they were going to start executing hostages at sunrise. Captain Torres reached us with 30 minutes to spare." Kane's jaw tightened. "You can't possibly know that. These terrorist groups often make empty threats to—" "Sir." Sergeant Hawkins emerged from the communications tent carrying a tablet computer. "I think you need to see this." Hawk approached cautiously, very aware that he was interrupting a general officer, but the expression on his face suggested the information was too important to delay. "What is it, Sergeant?" Kane demanded. "Intercepted militia communication, sir, time-stamped from approximately 6 hours ago." Hawk held up the tablet. "They were definitely planning to execute the hostages at dawn. Captain Torres's intelligence was accurate." Kane stared at the tablet, then at the assembled group of rescued civilians. Maya could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing political damage against operational success, trying to find a way to maintain his position. "Be that as it may," Kane said finally, "Captain Torres has violated direct orders. Military discipline requires effective leadership," a new voice interrupted. Colonel Farah Idris stepped into the light, accompanied by 2 officers from the Djiboutian armed forces. Her expression was diplomatically neutral, but her words carried unmistakable weight. "General Kane, the government of Djibouti wishes to commend Captain Torres for her successful rescue operation. Her actions have eliminated a significant threat to regional stability and demonstrated the effectiveness of U.S.-Djiboutian cooperation." Kane's face flushed. "Colonel Idris, this was an unauthorized operation conducted without proper coordination." "An operation that succeeded when official channels failed," Idris replied calmly. "An operation that saved lives and eliminated dangerous criminals who were threatening innocent civilians." She paused meaningfully. "My government is prepared to make our appreciation known to your superiors at AFRICOM." Maya watched Kane's political calculations shift in real time. A diplomatic commendation from the host nation would be difficult to dismiss, especially when combined with 14 American civilians and detailed intelligence proving the hostages had been in immediate danger. Kane's radio crackled. "Base actual, this is AFRICOM Command, requesting immediate sitrep on hostage recovery operation." The general's hand moved toward his radio, then stopped. Around them, the assembled soldiers, medics, and civilians waited to see how he would characterize the night's events to his superiors. "General," Maya said quietly, "you can court-martial me if you want, but those 14 people are alive because someone was willing to act when action was needed. That's what we're supposed to do." Kane stared at her for a long moment, then keyed his radio. "AFRICOM Command, this is base actual. Hostage recovery operation successful. All American civilians recovered, alive, and in good condition." He released the transmit button and looked around at the faces watching him. "Stand down security detail. Release Captain Torres from restraint."
Rodriguez moved forward and cut Maya's zip ties. As circulation returned to her hands, Kane stepped closer and spoke in a voice only she could hear. "This isn't over, Torres. Don't mistake tactical retreat for surrender." Maya rubbed her wrists and met his gaze. "Understood, sir." But as she looked around at the faces of the people she'd saved, Maya realized that some victories were worth any price. The AFRICOM investigation team arrived at Camp Lemonnier 48 hours later, led by Brigadier General Patricia Hoffman, a no-nonsense officer with a reputation for thoroughness and integrity. Maya spent 6 hours in detailed interviews, walking through every aspect of the unauthorized rescue operation while Pentagon stenographers recorded every word. "Captain Torres," General Hoffman said as the formal session concluded, "your tactical execution was flawless, but your decision to violate direct orders raises serious questions about command authority and military discipline." Maya sat at attention in the sterile conference room. "Yes, ma'am. I understand the implications of my actions. Do you regret your decision?" The question hung in the air. Maya thought about Lena and the other hostages, now safely back with their families. She thought about the intelligence intercepts that had confirmed the militia's execution plans. She thought about Kane's willingness to let innocent people die to protect his career. "No, ma'am. I regret that the circumstances made it necessary, but I don't regret saving those lives." General Hoffman nodded and closed her folder. "That will be all for now, Captain. Please remain available for additional questions." That evening, Maya sat in her quarters reviewing the events of the past week. Her tactical gear had been confiscated pending the investigation, and she'd been restricted to base while the AFRICOM team completed their review. The uncertainty was worse than combat. At least in a firefight, you knew who was shooting at you. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. She opened it to find General Hoffman standing in the corridor, alone and out of uniform. "Mind if I come in, Captain? This is off the record." Maya stepped aside, puzzled by the informal visit. Hoffman settled into the small chair and studied her for a moment. "I've been in this business for 26 years. I've seen good officers destroyed by bad leadership, and I've seen bad officers promoted because they knew how to play political games. What I haven't seen very often is someone willing to risk everything to do the right thing." Maya remained silent, unsure where the conversation was heading. The hostages gave their statements this morning, all 14 of them. Unanimous praise for your professionalism, your tactical skill, and your determination to save their lives. Dr. Cho was particularly eloquent about how you kept them calm under fire and ensured everyone made it out safely. They're good people, ma'am. They deserved better than being abandoned for political reasons. Yes, they did. Hoffman leaned forward slightly. Tell me about General Kane's briefing. His exact words when he ordered the stand-down. Maya recounted Kane's dismissal of rescue options, his emphasis on diplomatic solutions, his direct threat of court-martial if she attempted unauthorized action. Hoffman took notes, occasionally asking for clarification on specific statements. Did General Kane provide any intelligence assessments supporting his decision? No, ma'am. He dismissed local intelligence about the militia's execution timeline, said it was unreliable. But Sergeant Hawkins had intercepted communications confirming the threat. Yes, ma'am. Time-stamped intercepts indicating the hostages would be killed at dawn. Hoffman closed her notebook and stood up. Captain, the investigation will be completed within 24 hours. I wanted you to know that your actions probably saved 14 lives that would have been lost if we'd followed proper procedures. The next morning, Maya was summoned to the base conference room where the full AFRICOM team had assembled. General Kane sat at one end of the table, his expression carefully neutral. General Hoffman occupied the opposite end, flanked by legal officers and intelligence specialists. Captain Torres, General Hoffman began formally, this investigation has examined your unauthorized rescue operation from multiple perspectives: tactical, legal, diplomatic, and operational. The findings are as follows. Maya stood at attention, prepared for the worst. First, your violation of direct orders is documented and confirmed. However, the investigation also confirms that those orders were issued despite credible intelligence indicating imminent threat to American civilian lives.
Kane's face remained impassive, but Maya could see tension in his posture. Second, your tactical execution of the rescue operation was exemplary. All hostages were recovered alive, with minimal civilian casualties and no friendly losses. The operation achieved complete success despite significant resource limitations. Maya allowed herself a slight breath of relief. Third, General Kane's decision to prohibit rescue operations appears to have been motivated by career preservation rather than sound military judgment. His dismissal of credible intelligence and his threats against personnel who advocated for immediate action demonstrate failures of leadership that endangered American lives. Kane's face flushed, but he remained silent. Therefore, Hoffman continued, Captain Torres will receive an official reprimand for violating direct orders. However, she will also receive the Bronze Star for valor in successfully rescuing 14 American civilians from hostile forces. Maya's knees nearly buckled with relief. General Kane will be relieved of command immediately and face a board of inquiry regarding his fitness for continued service. Hoffman's voice carried the finality of institutional justice. Captain Torres, you are hereby assigned to establish and command a new rapid response unit for high-risk rescue operations. Congratulations, Major Torres. The promotion was unexpected, stunning. Maya struggled to find words. Ma'am, Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me, Major. Thank the 14 people whose lives you saved when no one else was willing to try. As the formal session ended and officials filed out, Kane approached Maya one last time. His political armor had been stripped away, leaving only a bitter man facing the end of his career. You think you've won something, but there will always be another committee, another review board, another politician who values stability over action. Enjoy your moment. Maya met his gaze steadily. General, I didn't do this to win anything. I did it because it was right. Kane walked away without another word,
his perfect uniform and polished boots carrying him toward disgrace and early retirement. That evening, Maya stood on the base perimeter, watching the sunset over the Horn of Africa. Tomorrow, she would begin building her new unit, training operators who understood that sometimes the right choice meant defying the wrong orders. The landscape stretched endlessly before her, full of dangers that couldn't be managed from conference rooms, full of people who might need someone willing to risk everything to bring them home. Her satellite phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Lena Cho. "Heard about your promotion. Well deserved. Thank you for reminding us what courage looks like." Maya smiled and put the phone away. Some rewards couldn't be measured in rank or decorations. Some victories were worth any price. In the distance, a patrol helicopter lifted off for its evening reconnaissance mission. Maya watched it disappear into the darkening sky, carrying soldiers who might one day face the same impossible choice between orders and conscience. When that moment came, she would be ready to support them. After all, that's what leaders are supposed to do.
Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.